Last September during Hurricane Irma, a tree branch hit a transformer and knocked out the air conditioning to a nursing home in Hollywood, Florida. There were portable air conditioners on site, but they were insufficient, and temperatures rose to a sweltering 110 degrees Fahrenheit. By the time emergency responders had realized the scope of the problem, 12 residents had tragically lost their lives. It was situations like these that compelled me a few years ago to set aside my career as an astrophysicist and instead devote my attention toward the phenomenon that's making extreme events like Hurricane Irma more intense, and that's climate change. So through this AAAS fellowship, I've had the privilege of working with the Department of Energy's Building Technologies Office. And when I told people I'd be going to BTO, they'd ask, why? I thought you cared about climate change. And I'd have to tell them that in the United States, buildings consume about 40% of all energy and 75% of all electricity. So if BTO could achieve its mission of developing more energy-efficient building components, not only could we create jobs and save tens of billions of dollars a year, but we could also take a significant chunk out of our greenhouse gas emissions and begin to mitigate this massive problem. So I'm going to put on my salesman's cap for a second. I'm going to try to sell you on 2 energy efficiency success stories. Okay, number 1, this is what refrigerators used to look like. Bulky, ugly, expensive energy hogs. But through advances in technology, modern refrigerators are even bigger, yet only consume 1/4 of the energy, cost 1/3 the price, and let you watch cable news right on the refrigerator door. In fairness to BTO, we had nothing to do with the cable news part. Just want to make that clear. Okay, number 2, clothes dryers, which use 1% of all energy in the United States largely by heating and evaporating water. But right now, researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory are developing ultrasonic drying technology in which rapidly vibrating membranes will atomize the water, which can get siphoned off as a cool mist. If we can bring this to scale, you will be able to dry your clothes in half the time with 1/5 the energy. And I've already got the slogan. The ultrasonic clothes dryer, bringing your sock drawer to Mach 4. That tests well, good. But the thing is, mitigating emissions goes beyond just using less energy. It's also about using the right kinds of energy. And every so often, I'll run into a young idealist who will say, well, we need to go to 100% renewable energy, more wind, more solar. The thing is, our grid has to balance generation and demand in real time. So while I admire that idealism, how do you keep the lights on when the sun stops shining and the wind stops blowing? Well, there's a new device that's made its way into about half of all buildings, and that's the smart electricity meter. And what's unique about it is that it enables utilities to send signals to buildings. So I want you to imagine it's one of the hottest days of the year. People are getting off work, they're driving home. What's one of the first things they do when they walk in the door? They turn on their air conditioners at the same time. These tend to be the highest demand hours of the entire year, and our grid has to be overbuilt to accommodate them. It would be like building a 100-lane highway just to accommodate Thanksgiving Day traffic. It's great for a few hours a year, but then you have to pay to build and maintain all of this infrastructure that most of the time is going completely underutilized. And the more lanes of that highway you drive on, the higher the toll, or in this case, the price of electricity gets for everybody. Now, smart meters enable utilities to send signals to buildings that are like, hey, look, we're about to have a really expensive event on our hands. If you are willing, we will pay you to reduce your demand. And literally, with the instantaneous flip of a switch, buildings help the grid balance, including instances when variable renewable energy like solar and wind suddenly become unavailable. And this is referred to as demand response. Another way to help the grid balance is by storing excess solar and wind energy, then dispatching it later as needed. The challenge is that going 100% renewable would require a ginormous amount of storage. Now, we can get some of it from grid-scale pumped hydroelectric energy and some of it from electrochemical batteries, but there's another way that we can store energy, and that's in a building's thermal mass. So imagine that you take a liquid material and you embed it in the bricks that make up the walls of your building. It's a hot, sunny day, so the grid instructs your air conditioner to turn on at 2 p.m. The liquid material freezes, the AC shuts off before 5, and when you get home, your building acts like a giant cooler, keeping you comfortable without having to consume electricity at the worst part of the day. And while all of this is fantastic, even if we could go zero carbon tomorrow, so much inertia has built up in the Earth system that global climate conditions will continue to deteriorate for decades to come. That means more extreme weather events and more prolonged power outages. Now, it would be great if everyone could evacuate to safe locations, but for a variety of reasons that remains impractical or impossible for far too many people. That means we need buildings to allow people to shelter in place. And if you need a building to maintain a safe thermal environment longer and with less energy, two of your most valuable resources are energy-efficient walls and windows. Combine that with network connectivity and smart controls, and eventually, buildings will be able to prepare themselves thermally and electrically when adverse conditions can be predicted ahead of time. And unlike centralized power plants or even solar panels, energy efficiency and demand response can be deployed absolutely anywhere. Now look, I fully acknowledge there are other crucial resiliency strategies out there. Utilities must continue to harden our electrical distribution system, and communities should have up-to-date climate action and disaster preparedness plans. But as long as climate change remains a wicked problem, every single one of us, in our own capacities, and we've heard about some of them tonight, are going to have to do what we can, and then maybe, collectively, we'll get to the point where tragedies, like the one in that Hollywood, Florida nursing home, never have to happen again. Thank you.